Hey there. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think I need this when I'm making a video. Aren't you tired of this pandemic? I thought it would be over by now. And when I'm not making videos, I'm actually a healthcare worker. So I have to work in a hospital every day. But anyway, welcome again to another installment on stories of mythology, books to read in mythology. And today I'm going to tackle a little bit giants, ogres, and trolls. Now, the interesting thing about giants is, well, apart from being really big, is that according to so many myths and legends, is that they seem to be a group of beings that existed at the very beginning of time. They were around before gods, they were around before humans, they were around before earth and heaven, and then they went away, to make room for gods and humans. And I guess one hypothesis as to why that is that maybe when people first looked around and they noticed how big things were, the mountains, the oceans, the sky, the earth, they might have figured that, wow, it must have taken huge beings to put all this together. But that's just one idea. Um, um, we know that from in Greek mythology, there was sometimes giants are also a little confused with gods themselves. For example, in Greek mythology, we know that there were these group of beings, this group of elder gods known as the Titans, and they came before the gods. They were among the earliest beings to exist. And then the gods came later, and the Olympian gods that we know better as Zeus and Hera and Poseidon and Hades. But they weren't the first gods. They were the Olympian gods that came after, and they had a great war with these huge titans, and they won. And Zeus threw the titans down into Tartarus and chained them there. And that's that. In in Norse mythology, there's a very interesting story. One of the earliest living beings is a giant by the name of Ymir, and once again, the giants were there first. The gods came a little later, and so what happens is that when the gods started existing, they actually took Ymir and killed him, and from his body they created the earth and the heavens. Uh, his bones became the mountains. His blood became the rivers. His skull became the dome of heaven, actually. And one of the gods that killed Ymir was Odin himself, the king of the gods. And the gods put four dwarfs on four spots of the skull cap to hold it up. Um, and this is again oddly very similar to all the way on the other side of the world in China. There's actually a similar story. There's a giant that existed called Pangu, and Pangu he actually helped separate the earth from the heavens, and he actually, when he put the heavens in place and he helped create the earth, he actually, instead of using dwarfs, he used four mountains to hold up the dome of heaven. And then he died, and from his body came so many other things uh, that came to make up the earth. So the Pangu story is kind of similar to the Ymir story. Going back into Europe, in Finland, the Finns have this. I talked about it in my video on books on Finnish and Slavic mythology. The Finns have this book called the Kalevala, and it tells of, in the very beginning there was nothing but water and no land, and there was this group of beings that existed in heaven, these giant beings. And one day, a woman who lived up there got tired of living up there, and she decided to throw herself up off of heaven and land in the water. And she floated around. And the funny thing about the story is that she gets impregnated by the natural elements of the sky and the not the well the wind and the waves, and she gets impregnated by the natural elements, and she floats around for literally centuries and pregnant. And then one day a little bird lands on her knee. It's a teal. That's the bird was lays some eggs, and then the eggs break, and from the egg she creates the earth and the heavens and various other things, and she helps put the earth together. And then finally, after hundreds of years, she gives birth, and the person that she gives birth to is the hero of the Kalevala. His name is Venomoden, and he's born an old man. He's not really a god. He's kind of a wizard, so to speak, a great magic worker, and so he's born an old man, and then his mother goes away, and he finishes the job of putting the earth together. After she created the earth and the heavens, he actually helped put stuff on the earth, like the grass and the grain and stuff like that. And strangely, this story is oddly similar to a North American, Native American myth. The Iroquois tell of a story that one day the earth, there was no earth, there was just vast amounts of water, and there was a group of beings that lived up in heaven. And one day, a woman decided to leave that world, and she fell to earth. And I didn't know she was a giant, but according to one version I read, she's sometimes depicted as being very big. So she may be another type of giant. And she also fell to earth, just like the story from Finnish mythology. So she fell to earth, and but instead of being alone, floating in the water, like in the Finnish myth, she actually had a group of animal friends to help her out. And she had a group of animals with her, and she spent time for a while on the back of a tortoise. And she realized that the tortoise is the only thing that she had to sit on because there was no land. So she asked some of her other animal helpers to, I don't know if you hear that noise. It's the 4th of July. I'm making this video. Anyway, she has different animal helpers to help her. She thinks that maybe deep under the water, there's some soil. So she asked different animals to go deep beneath the waves to try and bring up some soil. And several animals try and they fail until finally, according to one version, a little frog goes all the way down and comes up and he coughs up a little tiny bit of soil. And from this, she was able to create the earth from just this little bit of soil. She was able to expand it. And on the back of the tortoise, she was able to create the earth. And it's one of the reasons why so many people think that the earth is on the back of a turtle. Or a tortoise. I'm not sure if it's a turtle or a tortoise. So you see these, sometimes this group of myth is called, there's different versions of these Native American myths. They're sometimes called the earth diver myths, where some animal dives deep into the water to bring up some soil to create the earth, So moving on to ogre. Well, I'm not going to say much about ogres. Is that ogres are usually giants that I think their main thing that sets them apart is that they tend to be these awful giants that have a habit of eating children. That's kind of the thing that sets ogres apart. They like to kill and eat kids. There's one book I have here. Here's an interesting ogre. So he's reaching down and he's picking up these little kids and he's got this big knife and he's about to kill and eat them. This is actually from Perrault's fairy tales. I know you know the Grimm brothers fairy tales, but I think you should give Perrault a try. He actually collected folk tales before the Grimm brothers, and this is a wonderful illustrated version of a collection of his tales by Gustave Doré as the illustrator, and this is put out by Dover, so I recommend it. So I'm not going to really mention much more about ogres. Anyway, moving on finally to trolls. Trolls, again, I mentioned trolls briefly on my previous video on dwarves. I mentioned it because sometimes trolls are seen as different sizes. Sometimes they're seen as gnome-like creatures like dwarves, and other times they're seen as your typical huge, ugly, hairy beings in Norse myth. And I had mentioned also that it's a very ancient word, and they tend to do with, it's believed that the term troll tends to do with spinning, revolving. It's funny, when you think of trolls, you think of those little ugly dolls with the different colored hair. That's kind of a sad excuse for a troll. You want to see a really cool troll. Here's a troll. This guy followed me back from Norway, and I called him Helge, and he's been keeping me company for 20 years. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll put Helge over here, and so that's a troll from Norway. Uh, but it's amazing if you go to Norway. That's the main thing. That's like a big thing they sell is all kinds of trolls, and that's just one example. And there's smaller ones, there's bigger ones, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Trolls are a big thing in Norway. But like I said, it's believed that they played a role in making the landscape as the way it looks. They live in caves during the day. They come out at night because if they come out during the day, they turn to stone. I'll tell one. I'm going to tell one little cute story about a troll. What happens is that one day in Norway there was very late at night there was a servant girl who was babysitting, and she was all alone, and she heard a rumbling outside her little house, and she looked to the window, and there was this horrible face staring right at her. It was the face of a troll, and the little girl had to think of a way to keep the troll from crashing through and eating her. So she came up with a riddle game. Apparently, this is a time-honored thing where you challenge somebody to a riddle, and if they answer correctly, then they could ask you a riddle. And if you answer correctly, you go back and forth, and the loser, the one who can't think of the answer to the riddle, is the one who's going to pay for it. If she doesn't get a riddle, he's going to eat her. If the troll doesn't get a riddle, he's got to go away. So she challenges the troll to a riddle contest, and the two of them go back and forth throughout the night. And just when the girl was getting exhausted, she told one last riddle, and at that point, the sun rose just in time, and there was an explosion outside her window, and she quickly got up and looked through the window and looked down, and there was nothing but a rock there. So her plan wasn't necessarily so much to win the riddle contest, but was to make the troll lose track of time, so that he could forget the fact that he's got to get back to his cave because the sun's about to rise and kill him. So I thought I think that's a great little story. For books, I'm going to I recommend the Perrault's fairy tales. You could read about that ogre that he talks about in that story. Other books, I'm going to recommend three books, and they're all from the series the Enchanted World, and by Time Life Books. I hope they're still available. The troll story I just told is from this book, and let's see if I can find the picture of the troll. That's the troll looking in through the window. Isn't that great? So this book is Night Creatures. Night Creatures from the Enchanted World series, Time Life Books. The story that I got from I got them from other sources as well, but a simple to read version of the Finnish myth and the Native American myth I got from this wonderful version of the Enchanted World. It's called The Book of Beginnings, and it has easy to read and beautiful little retellings of the Water Mother from the Finnish myth. Here's the water. Let me see if I can find the picture of her. Here's the Water Mother from Finnish myth, floating around in the ocean without land, and she's pregnant, and it also has the Pangu story. Here's the the Chinese story of Pangu holding up the heavens. These books are really beautifully illustrated. And finally, there's even the Native American story. Here's the woman. I made a mistake. I said she jumped from the heavens into the ocean. I think she had an illness. There she is ill, and through the course of the illness, she fell from heaven rather than voluntarily jump from heaven. One more illustration, which I really like. Here's the Native American woman with her animal friends in the very beginning when she's on the back of the tortoise, and her animal friends are with her. And so this particular book is the Book of Beginnings, part of the Enchanted World series, and it's put out by Time Life Books. And finally, one more, if you're really interested in giants and ogres, I didn't really take any stories from this book, but this is a whole book, again, from the same series, the Enchanted World, Time-like books, and this is just on giants and ogres. So if you want to read more on giants and ogres, I recommend it. It's really great. Okay, happy reading.